Hello, and welcome to the first ever episode of Sports Unleashed with Wilbros podcast. This will be a weekly podcast, episodes dropping every week. Today's topics we'll be discussing Northwest Ohio high school football, NLL Division winners from both sides, teams that could be very good in the playoffs, and game preview of the game I will be at, Bowling Green vs Defiance at Defiance High School on Friday night. We will be previewing NFL, latest games Monday night, teams that are cementing themselves Super Bowl contenders, and teams that could be sneaky good come the playoffs. MLB, we'll talk about the World Series game last night. And our last topic, college football, we'll talk about two big matchups, both involving teams from the Big Ten. First, start high school football. Anthony Wayne versus Perrysburg was the big matchup last week. Anthony Wayne wins by a score of 31-14 over the Perrysburg Yellow Jackets to clinch a Buckeye Division Championship in the Northern Lakes League for the second year in a row running. Anthony Wayne was picked fourth in the preseason to finish in the Buckeye Division. Now they are first. This game in the first half was very competitive. Both teams, physical, back and forth. Both teams were scoring. But then the second half approached, you could really see Anthony Wayne taking that next step and pulling away from Perrysburg, as I just think Anthony Wayne had too many weapons for Perrysburg to handle with in the secondary. Anthony Wayne's good, man. They're always really good. They got a very good quarterback, Grant Kinney, who's committed to Colgate. They got very good receivers in Ben Nekars, Dylan Ty, Cam Miller. I could probably go on and on. They got a very good offensive line. Their defense is very fast and also really aggressive with Cash Kruger, Kyle Weimer, multiple guys to add on to that. They're a very good team, and I wouldn't be surprised playoffs if they make a very good run this year. I think this year they can do it. They got a very good offense. Grant Kinney extending the ball deep, I think, is helping them very much. He's a very good passer, can run the ball really well too. So I think for them, they just need to keep being themselves and just keep winning games. We look at the Perrysburg side of things. First half, you looked really good. Perrysburg was looking really good in the first half. They were running the ball efficiently well. They were throwing the ball efficiently well. Defense was getting stops. Just too many 3-and-outs for them in the second half. Just couldn't run the ball efficiently well. Credit to Anthony Wayne's defense. They made the adjustments they need to make. It was just a matter of time, I think, before Perrysburg ran out of gas a little bit. Their defense just couldn't handle in the secondary with the receivers, including that last play in the first half. They threw a 50-yard deep pass to Ben Nekars, which was caught over two defenders. I think the key for them going in the playoffs is just keep getting better. I think their secondary will be fine. They just got to make a couple adjustments. I think their quarterback play was okay. If they can get that run game efficiently well and get their playmakers the ball, they're going to be a good team come the playoffs as well in a very tough region, to say the least. Move on to the NLL Cardinal Division. Cardinal Division champions, the Clay Eagles, led by pick commit quarterback Mason Heitschel. They had a good season this year. Them and Napoleon were the two most schools most likely to win the Cardinal Division. I would have picked Clay. They're very good. Offensive-wise, they're really good. They got Troy Azuda. They've got Brayden Schultz. They got Ian DeWitt. And I keep going on and on with the receivers. Mason Heinschel is Mason Heinschel. We know what he can do with the ball in his hands. Their offensive line play was very good. This year I thought that was the key question coming off last year. Could they give Mason Heinschel the time he needed in the pocket? And this year it proved so really good. They improved very much on the offensive line. Their defense in the secondary was very good. Their linebackers were aggressive. They were just the overall better team in this division. Bowling Green gave them some troubles in, I think, week 6 or week 7, only won by 7. They played a lot of close games, but, hey, they pulled them through, and they're your Cardinal Division titles. Cardinal Division champions, I meant to say. So now we look forward now into the playoff season. Teams that I think could be very good in the playoffs this year. I'll start off. Team we already talked about, Anthony Wayne Generals. They're just good, man. Every year they just find ways to be really good. This year people picked them picked fourth. I really didn't understand why that was, because I knew with their very good coach, Andy Brungard, that they're a very good team regardless of who they have. They got a very good offense led by Grant Kinney. Braden Gardner, I forgot to mention, very good running back. Very good receivers, as I said before. Offensive line play has improved over the weeks to come. I think the big question for them is, can they win the big one? Last 2 years, they've been knocked out in the third round either by Medina Highland or Avon Lake. But can this be the year they get over that hump and potentially match up with Medina Highland in the third round again? But this year, can they get over the top and get to that next level they want to be? the state Final Four. I think this is the year they can do it. I think their defense is very vastly improved. I think their secondary is what you kind of need to worry about for them. If you get a team that starts extending over the top with some play action pass in the run game, that could confuse them a little bit. So for them, I think it's just play like themselves. Just do what they've been doing all year and just keep winning. Next team we'll move on to, Whitmer Panthers. Had a disappointing NLL season to say the least. I know they were tied with second with Perrysburg, but they destroyed Perrysburg, and then they got destroyed by Anthony Wayne. They have a very good quarterback in Brady Ford, a very good offensive line with commits to go into Ohio State, Kentucky, etc., other Division I schools. I think the big key for them is their defense. Their defense, as we saw in the Anthony Wayne game, is kind of lackluster. They didn't make many big plays to stop the run. Grant Kinney kind of ran all over their defense. He threw all over their defense as well. So I think if their defense can make more adjustments as we see them come, I think they could be very good. In the region they're in is very tough. They got Dublin Kaufman. They've got St. Ed's. They've got Perrysburg. You've also got Findlay without Ryan Montgomery. They're still kind of solid. So I think for them, the big key is that their defense can play just good enough. With their quarterback play being as good as with Brady Ford, I think they could win at least 1 or 2 games in these playoffs. Next team I'll go with, NLL Division Champs, Clay Eagles. I think this is a team that's not being really talked about having a good playoff run. But I just see with their side of the bracket, they could make an interesting run here. Mason Heichel, very good quarterback, as I said in the past, can make plays on the ground, can throw it in the air. Troy Zuda, probably one of the best receivers in the Northern Lakes League. I think the key for them is their offense just needs to keep doing what they've been doing all year, just making plays. If they can do that against some solid teams that they'll be playing in their region, I think they could be a very good sneaky team that could win 2 or 3 games possibly, depending on what their matchups are. I think if their defense can step up just a little bit, their defense hasn't been bad, but if their defense can be just a little better than it has, I think they can be a very good sneaky team come November. Last team I'll go over, I know it's boring, Division III champs, Central Catholic. I know it's kind of boring on me to keep saying, well, they've won the state championship 2 years in a row. Well, they're pretty freaking good, as you can see. I know they played a lot closer games than we expected this year, but their question coming in this year was they're going to be their quarterback play. I think their quarterback has expanded throughout that, has been very good for them. Their run games are always very strong. Their offensive line is very dominant in the run game in the trenches. Their defense is very fast. Sherrod Vaughn, very good defensive back. They're fast, quick, aggressive, and they will light you up. I think the key for them is just do what they've been doing the last 2 years to win state championships. Play aggressive, have fun, and just dominate people. I think if they just do those 3 things very well, we could easily see them going back to back to back Division III state championships. And now moving on to my game of the week, a game that I will be attending, Bowling Green vs Defiance at Defiance High School, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Defiance is the 6th seed. Bowling Green is the 11th seed. Both these teams are interesting, man. Bowling Green coming off a 49-0 loss on senior night to the Fremont Ross Low Giants. Fremont Ross which gave Fremont Ross Low Giants their first ever playoff berth in 15 years. Defiance 6-4 in the West Buckeye Division. Coming off another great season, another playoff berth, and a home game for the Defiance Bulldogs. We'll be looking into both these teams in depth. First, we'll start off with the visitors, the 11 seed, the Bowling Green Bobcats. First-year head coach Sean Kiss, 2-2 in conference play, 3rd in the Northern Lakes League Cardinal Division, an overall 6-4 record, a record that was better than last year's record in Sean Kiss's first season. For them, a lot of injuries, especially running back position, a big one. Jackson Schaefer breaking his foot in Week 9 against Napoleon, out for the season. The main question is who's going to step up in his role. We know what J.C. Ashan can do, who's probably one of the best running backs in the Northern Lakes League. Who's going to step up in this place? Will it be Colby Joseph? Is it going to be Rhett Winger? Is it going to be Brogan Paisley? Is it going to be newly converted running back Jameson Horse? Who is going to be able to step up in that big of a role to replace the production that Jackson Schaefer was putting up when he was healthy? Their quarterback play, Grant Gillespie, freshman quarterback. Started the week they played Springfield, which was only a couple weeks ago. He's been solid. I like him as a quarterback. He's gonna just keep getting better and better. He's only a freshman. He's got more room to grow than ever. I think if he has a very good, solid game against a good Defiance Bulldogs team, I think they can upset Defiance pretty easily than most people expect. I know their run game is very dominant. Their offensive line is very strong in the trenches in the run game. But I think if Grant Gillespie can extend the ball outside to his playmakers like Evan Meyer, like Joey Klein, like Carter Earl, all three of those guys, if they all can contribute in some way, shape, or form, I think Bowling Green has a very good shot on offense to dominate this game. The one question I have on the Bowling Green side is the defense. Can that defense hold up against a very good and confusing Defiance Bulldogs offense? We know their D-line is going to be solid. They got Jameson Horst on the D-line. They got Hunter Kozlowitz. They got other guys like A.J. Miller and Drew Erickson. But I think the key for them, it's going to be their secondary. Can their secondary play a great game against some good playmakers on Defiance's side, like Brett Zippel and Brady Borton and Noah Gomez? Can Carter Earl and Joey Klein and Rhett Winger step up in that secondary enough to help Bowling Green win this game, not just on the offensive side, but on the defensive side as well? I think it can do those three main key takeaways and not give up the big plays and explosive plays. And if they can tackle well, I think they're going to be in a very good spot when it comes to winning this game. So moving on to the Defiance side of things, they're 6-4 in the West Buckeye Division, like I've said. They got a very good team. They're always very solid. They got good playmakers like Brady Borton, Brett Zippel, Noah Gomez, Matthew Walter, Anthony Wilder, Larry Wade, Andy Davis, Matthew Walter. So I think the main key for them is just keep being who they've been all year. Mix in a little bit of the passing game, keep running the ball in the trenches. Offensive line's very solid. I think the main weakness that I see is defense. If their defense keeps showing what they've been all year, they might get exposed a little bit against a very complex Bowling Green High School offensive running attack. I think the question, can their linebackers and D-line hold up strong enough against that Bowling Green run game to only make them one-dimensional in the passing game, which we know is BG's not strong suit, but it's going to have to be something that BG is going to have to do in order to win this game. I think if Defiance can do that solid enough and their offense can score, I think Defiance can win this game pretty easily. I think this game's going to go back and forth. Both two good teams, but in the end, my prediction, I do have the Bowling Green Bobcats going on the road to Defiance and upsetting the Bulldogs. Final score, Bowling Green 24, Defiance 17 is my final that I have. I think this game can go either way, but my pick will be Bowling Green. Now moving on to our next topic, NFL. Monday night, we had the New York Giants and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers win by a final of 26-18 over the New York Giants. Daniel Jones threw a game-sealing interception that helped the Steelers pull off another win, which improves them to 6-2 on the season. Looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive side, they're very good. We know their defense has been very strong for the past couple of years now, but now with the additions of like Patrick Queen, and their secondary has very much improved with already a good Minkah Fitzpatrick, a very much improved Joey Porter Jr., a very good defensive line with TJ Watt and Cameron Hayward and multiple guys I'm probably not even naming, but their defense is always just very strong. That helps them win so many ball games. And with Russell Wilson at the quarterback position, they look better than they have the past couple of years. I think that's what they've been missing is their quarterback play. They've had Kenny Pickett over the years who's struggling and is now the backup for the Philadelphia Eagles, but Russell Wilson has played very good football, except the strip sack fumble that he had, which gave the Giants a chance to come back and potentially win this game. Russell Wilson was pretty good. He distributed the ball well to his playmakers. George Pickens, 4 catches for 74 yards. Van Jefferson had 4 catches for 62 yards. Calvin Austin had 2 touchdowns, 1 receiving and 1 on a punt return that probably should have been a block in the back. Had 3 catches for 54, and their running game was also very solid. Najee Harris had 19 carries for 114 yards. Jaylen Warren had 9 carries, 46 yards. They combined for 167 yards on the ground. If you can do that efficiently with Najee Harris, who I think is a very underrated good running back in this league, you're going to have a lot of chances to win ball games. And I think if their offense can just play like that and their defense just keeps the same way, I think the Steelers are going to be a very tough team, not just to be in the AFC North, but in the entire conference of the AFC. They got a very good team, and I wouldn't be surprised when we come playoff time if they make it to that AFC Divisional Championship round. But we'll see what happens after that. Super Bowl contenders that keep cementing their case. First off, Detroit Lions. Detroit fans, how are we feeling after that 52-14 decimation of the Tennessee Titans, who are 1-6, so they're obviously pretty poor and dog shit. Lions are pretty good, man. You know, Jared Goff had 3 touchdowns, but only 85 yards in the air. You know, they played 2 quarterbacks. Hendon Hooker got some time in the end. Hendon Hooker looked pretty good. Main key for the Detroit was their defense and their special teams this week. You know, their defense stepped up big time, forcing Mason Rudolph for many turnovers. Even though Calvin Ridley kind of burnt the top over their offense, he had 10 catches for 143. They had no answer for him the whole game, basically. But other than that, they were forcing turnovers, it felt like, left and right, just getting too much pressure on the quarterback. We know Tennessee Titans' offensive line is not very good. So the Lions were able to expose that weakness even more and just dominate the Tennessee Titans. Offensive-wise, their running game was very strong. Montgomery didn't have that big of a day. It was the Jahmyr Gibbs show, having 11 carries for 127 yards and a touchdown. Sam Laporta was the lead receiver, had 6 catches for 48 yards and a touchdown. I think this is a sign to come that Sam Laporta is going to be very good come the second half. You know, we saw how very good he was in his rookie season. We know how good he is. You know, they got Green Bay coming up this week in Fox's Game of the Week at 4:25 in Lambeau Field. Can they sustain this momentum going into Green Bay to face a very good Packers team that's given them problems over the years? But I think if the Lions just keep doing that to teams and just dominating in the trenches and in the run game and the defensive side, I think they're going to be a very good team come Super Bowl time, and they could possibly make a case for I think they could win the Super Bowl this year, and I'm not kidding on that. Next team that cemented their case potentially to get to the Super Bowl, Philadelphia Eagles. I know they haven't looked the best in the last couple weeks, but this week against Cincinnati Bengals looked a lot different than the previous weeks. Jalen Hurts probably played the best game of his season so far, 16 of 20 for 236 yards, 1 touchdown, also adding 3 touchdowns on the ground. All were tush-push touchdowns. Saquon Barkley had 22 carries for 108 yards. Devontae Smith had 6 catches for 85 and a touchdown. A.J. Brown had 5 catches for 84 yards, but no touchdowns. Their offense looked very good this week. You know, this is a sign of improvement coming for the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, we know Nick Sirianni doesn't have the best coaching management decisions, but this week they looked very solid against a decent Bengals team. The Bengals aren't terrible. We know their defense is kind of iffy sometimes, but their offense is very good. Philly just dominated this game from the second half on. Saquon Barkley is probably going to be the best move the Philadelphia Eagles have ever made in the last 10 years of free agency. Like, the difference he makes in your run game, I'm not saying DeAndre Swift was bad. DeAndre Swift was very good, and now he's doing very good with the Chicago Bears. But getting a caliber player like Saquon Barkley into your team just makes you that more dangerous when you already have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Kenneth Gainwell, Dallas Goedert, and Jalen Hurts with a very good offensive line that's not even healthy yet. They don't even have Lane Johnson, who's always an all-pro right tackle in their position. And their defense also very solid in this game. You know, Cooper DeJean had a very good game this week. Nakobe Dean was very solid. Brandon Graham, who's been there forever, was very good. Quinyon Mitchell. Like, these rookies and these veterans are starting to prove where Philly's defense was 2 years ago before their fall off last year, getting absolutely decimated by the Buccaneers. This is starting to look like the Philly team we saw 2 years ago that made the Super Bowl, that was beating the Kansas City Chiefs in the fourth quarter, but couldn't hold on. If this team can just keep getting better offensively, and their defense played like they did against Joe Burrow and that very good high-caliber offense in the Bengals, I think they're going to be a team that's going to be dangerously looking for a Super Bowl berth. Could be right there at the Lions, but we'll see. Keeping on the playoff talk, teams that could be sneaky good come playoffs. I have 2 teams in my head that come off the top of my head. They're both NFC teams. First, it'll be from the NFC West. Nope, not the San Francisco 49ers. The Los Angeles Rams knocking off the Minnesota Vikings this week, 30-20. Matthew Stafford was very good, 25 of 34 for 279 yards, 4 touchdowns, did throw an interception. Puka Nacua, first game back, over 100 yards receiving. Cooper Kupp looked very solid, had 50 yards and a touchdown. Kyron Williams almost added 100 yards, was at 97 yards on the ground. We know the LA Rams offense, when fully healthy, is very dangerous. With the healthy Matthew Stafford, with a healthy Kyron Williams, and with a healthy Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, and also added in a little Demarcus Robinson action there, who's been also very solid for them this year in their absences. They're a solid team offensively, man. We knew that when they weren't healthy, they were struggling, and we kind of knew why that was. You know, when you're missing 2 of your top playmakers, that's pretty hard to overcome. Their run game's been very good. You know, Blake Corum's now starting to get a little more action, which I kind of like. He's more of a power threat than an elusive threat like Kyron Williams is. Kyron Williams is a very good running back, people. Most people don't talk about him, but I think he's a very good, potentially top 10 running back in this league. I think their defense was also very good against a solid Minnesota Vikings offensive line. Jared Verse, the rookie, had 1.5 sacks. Their defensive line, their DBs played very well, forced multiple turnovers against Sam Darnold. I think for them, the key, if their offense can keep getting better and better, and when they get healthier, I think this team could be a sneaky team to not just make the playoffs. They could win the NFC West with how weak that division's looking right now. I know the 49ers just beat the Cowboys by 6, but I think if they can win the 3/4 remainder of their games, or just half of them, and they can beat the 49ers, I think they have a good shot of winning the NFC West. My second team that I have on here from the NFC South. Nope, not Tampa Bay. The Atlanta Falcons. Yeah, Atlanta. You're back. Kirk Cousins, 23 of 29 for 276 yards and 4 touchdowns. Was very good. Kyle Pitts had 2 of those touchdowns with 91 yards in the air. Darnell Mooney had 4 catches for 86 yards and a touchdown. Bijan Robinson had 7 catches for 43 yards and a touchdown. Drake London also had 35 yards, and Bijan Robinson added 60 yards on the ground. This is what we expected from Atlanta this year. I know there were many questions coming in on why they would take Michael Penix, even though you just signed Kirk Cousins to a long-term deal, and also paid him a lot of money. And he's starting to prove why he's a very good quarterback in this league. When he's healthy, Kirk Cousins can make any offense look very good. With the receivers, he's got Darnell Mooney, looks very strong. Drake London starting to look like the guy we thought he would be. Kyle Pitts, is he starting to become that guy that we really thought could be the next Rob Gronkowski? I don't know, but he's starting to look like it. And with Bijan Robinson, this offense looks very dangerous just for the NFC South. In a weak NFC South now, with the Bucs not having Chris Godwin or Mike Evans in their team, Atlanta's defense is also very good. You know, they got multiple good veterans. They got A.J. Terrell, who's young and a very solid corner. They got Jesse Bates, who's a very good safety. They got Matthew Judon and Greg Jarrett, 2 very good pass rushers. They got Zach Harrison, who was also very solid. They got Antonio Hamilton Sr., another good defensive back. So I think for the Atlanta Falcons, their main key is that their offense can keep playing like this and their defense gets a little bit better, and they maybe go out and acquire someone in the trade deadline. I think the Atlanta Falcons could be a sneaky good team to maybe win 1 or 2 playoff games, but we'll have to see when it comes to playoff time. Moving on to our next topic, MLB. Game 4 of the World Series was last night. The Dodgers had a chance to sweep the New York Yankees last night in Game 4, but the New York Yankees showed up, and their bats finally showed. Yankees won this one 11-4. Clay Holmes gets the win with 1 1/3 innings pitched and 2 strikeouts. Daniel Hudson gets the loss for the Dodgers, gives up through an inning, gave up 2 hits, 4 earned runs, including the grand slam to Anthony Volpe, 1 strikeout and a walk. I really thought this was going to be a sweep. You know, watching that first inning, Freddie Freeman homered again. His 3rd home run of this World Series he's been incredible. This is probably the best World Series performance I've ever seen in my lifetime. Like, there's nothing that you could beat that could do better than this. Like, I don't know how the Yankees just keep pitching to him. You know, it was a bad 0-2 pitch, and Freeman made him pay, man. You know, the Dodgers offense kind of went quiet last night. I know Ohtani had a hit, Betts had a hit, Freeman also had a hit, Hernandez had a hit, but they didn't get those hits in the main ways that they need them to. Like Shohei, it was 6-4. Shohei had a chance to get him a tie game. No, struck out on a splitter that was well below the zone, made him look like an idiot. The main issue for the Dodgers last night was their pitching. You know, we knew this was going to be a bullpen game for the Dodgers. We know their bullpen has been solid over this postseason. Ben Casparis wasn't bad, had 3 walks, but only gave up 1 run, 1 hit, and a strikeout. Daniel Hudson was the guy who kind of dipped in the barrel for the Yankees to take this one. Gave up 2 hits, 4 runs, including the grand slam to Anthony Volpe. Walked 1 and struck out 1. Landon Knack pitched 4 innings, was very good. 2 hits, 1 run, 2 strikeouts, and only 1 walk. But it was that 8th inning that Brent Honeywell came in, gave up 4 hits, 5 earned runs, a walk, no strikeouts, and the Yankees just put it on him in the 8th inning. Gleyber Torres had a 3-run home run. Juan Soto had a double. Aaron Judge had an RBI single. Chisholm had a single. So the Yankees' bats came alive last night. I'll give them credit. They fought. Forced to do a Game 5 tonight in the Bronx. Now moving on to the Yankees side. This is what you needed to do. You got the job done. You won Game 4. Avoid the sweep. One game at a time if you're a New York fan. Aaron Judge finally delivered an RBI single last night. I know the game was out of hand by then. But is this the sign of turning that Aaron Judge needs to possibly lead the Yankees to one of the best comebacks in World Series history? Like, Aaron Judge, if he could start turning it around with Giancarlo Stanton playing the way he's playing and hitting the ball, this could help the Yankees come back and potentially make this series interesting if they could win this game tonight in the Bronx. Anthony Rizzo, his bat, he had some good swings last night, even though he had no hits. Volpe looked very solid, 2 hits, with including the grand slam. Austin Wells had a couple good hits last night, including a home run. Alex Verdugo had a 2 RBI single. Gleyber Torres had a home run. Their offense came to play last night, and I'll give them credit. That's what they needed to do. We'll see how they do tonight in Game 5 against Jack Flaherty, who's a very good, solid starting pitcher. But if their offense can just keep doing that, I think they can make this series very interesting and potentially extend it to Los Angeles if they can win tonight. Their pitching, Luis Gil kind of struggled. Gave up 5 hits, 4 runs, 2 walks, only 1 strikeout. And after that, the bullpen for the Yankees who has been surprisingly very good, shut it down. Tim Hill pitched 2/3 of innings, gave up a hit. Clay Holmes got the win, pitched 1/3 inning, no hits, 2 strikeouts. Mark Lyer Jr. pitched 2/3 innings, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts. Luke Weaver pitched 1 1/3 innings, had 3 strikeouts, and Tim Mayza closed it out. Their bullpen's been good. I think if they can keep doing that, and their starting pitchers can give them length, and their offense can get rolling just a little bit, I think they got a good chance of extending this to maybe 6 or 7 games if they can do that. Previewing just a little bit, Game 5 tonight. Garrett Cole on the mound for the Yankees going against Jack Flaherty for the Dodgers. It's going to be a good matchup. Garrett Cole has had very good playoff success over the years. Jack Flaherty has had good starts and has had bad starts. Game 1, I don't think he was terrible. He only gave up 2 runs because of the bond of Stanton. That wasn't even a bad pitch. Stanton just had put a really good swing on it. But I think the key for the New York Yankees is Garrett Cole can just be the guy who they pay him to be, an ace, a very good pitcher, and a guy who doesn't make mistakes often. If he can do that, and the Yankees' bats can get rolling offensively, they can extend this to 6 games going back to Los Angeles. But I think if the Dodgers can attack Garrett Cole early and get a couple runs on the board and make it kind of nerve-wracking, I think the LA Dodgers will be celebrating tonight as your World Series champions. Moving on to our last topic of the episode, college football this week. Couple big games, especially in the Big Ten. First, we'll start off with the 3:31 in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We will have the Oregon Ducks traveling to Ann Arbor to take on the Michigan Wolverines. Oregon is a 15.5-point favorite going against the Michigan Wolverines. I think the key for this game is, can Dylan Gabriel keep playing the way he has been playing? And now in his first true road test environment, going to Ann Arbor against the Michigan team who's looked good, who's looked bad, beat Michigan State last week. Davis Warren looked better. But can Dylan Gabriel sustain the success he's had over this year in this tough environment? We know he's got Jordan James as a running back, very good running back, who killed Ohio State. They got Tez Johnson. They got Evan Stewart. They got Ferguson, playmakers all around him. Their defense is very strong, and their defensive secondary and also defensive line. I think if Oregon just keeps being who they've been and just dominating people through the air and then on the defensive side, I don't see any reason how Oregon doesn't take care of business this weekend against Michigan. But if they get sloppy and make a couple mistakes, Michigan could get right in this thing and potentially pull it off. I think if Michigan can pull this off, if Davis Warren plays the best game of his career, I think if Davis Warren can play turnover-free football and make the throws he has to make with the running backs he's got, with Khalil Mullins and Donovan Edwards, I think Michigan can make this game very interesting and potentially pull off what could be a tremendous upset and a turnaround for Michigan's season. I know they've already lost 3 games, which they're probably not making the playoffs unless they win out and somehow win the Big Ten championship. But if they distribute the ball to their playmakers a little bit more, and Colston Loveland and Tyler Morris and Samaj Morgan, if they can do that and they can shut down Oregon's high explosive offense, I think Michigan has a very good chance of keeping this game close and potentially making this game interesting. But my final prediction, I do have Oregon taking care of business. Oregon 30, Michigan 20 is my final. Oregon wins by 10. Michigan does cover the 15.5 point spread. I got the Ducks in that one. And finally, last thing we'll be talking about, the big noon kickoff on Fox. Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt are on the call. It will be the Ohio State Buckeyes, who are ranked number 4 in the nation, going on the road to number 3 Penn State. Not a whiteout game. Probably will be a whiteout game, actually. Not a night game, which I'm very surprised it's not. But the big question this week, Drew Aller got hurt against Wisconsin. They had Bo Perbilla. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but I'm just going to keep it like that. It's Drew Aller. The status of him will be interesting. Is he going to play this week? James Franklin said he would be a game-time decision come this game. If Drew Aller does play, I think Penn State has a very good chance of winning this game. But if they end up starting Perbilla and not Drew Aller, I don't think Penn State is going to win this game. They got very good running backs, Katron Allen, Nick Singleton. They got very good receivers in Tyler Warren and also Julian Fleming, a former Ohio State Buckeye, point to the less. But for them, it's just, can they finally win the big one? James Franklin has proven he's a very good coach, but can he win the big one? This is the big one that Penn State needs to win in order to cement that they've had a good season. If Penn State can win this game, they will most likely be on their way to a Big Ten championship appearance. And Ohio State could be in very dangerous trouble if they lose this game. But if Penn State, I think, can just be themselves and capitalize on the big plays that they need to make, I think Penn State could pull off an upset for them. I know they're ranked higher, but this would be a massive win, not just for the players, but for also Nittany Lions Nation. That would be an awesome win for them to have. Looking now at the Ohio State side. Coming off, they lost to Oregon 2 weeks ago, had a bye week the week before, and just came back and played Nebraska and looked very sloppy. Only won by a score of 21-17 over Nebraska. Will Howard had 3 touchdowns, but also had another interception. Defense also looked very sloppy. They didn't make that many impactful plays, excluding the last interception they had that obviously ended up winning the game. Other teams got to step up this week in a tough environment, as Penn State as always is. Will Howard from the state of Pennsylvania going back to where he wanted to play as a kid, but they never offered him a scholarship. But can Will Howard lead now his Ohio State Buckeye team into Happy Valley and upset Penn State and keeping their season that could help them get to a Big Ten championship? Potentially a rematch against Oregon or Indiana, depending on what their schedule looks like and what happens around them. But I think their running game is going to be the most important thing in this game. I think if they can give Travion Henderson the carries and Quinshon Judkins both the carries they need, very explosive running backs, they're going to have a very good shot at winning this game, because I think they can be the 2 difference makers that help Ohio State pull this off in a tough environment like Penn State. They're going to distribute to their playmakers, Jaden Ballard, Emeka Ibuka, Brandon Innes, Carnell Tate, the freshman phenomenon, Jeremiah Smith, who I think is one of the best players overall in college football. But if they can deliver the ball to those playmakers very efficiently, they're going to always have a good shot of beating you. The big question for them, offensive line. Are they going to be able to sustain, and are they going to be able to stay healthy and sustain their momentum they've had? Last week was bad. The Oregon week was pretty good. Last week was pretty bad, though. If they could just play good enough to hold up against a very good Penn State defensive front, I think Ohio State's going to have no problem throwing the ball and also running the ball. They got to win in the trenches, though. That's a big key. Who's going to win the trenches? Is it going to be Penn State's defensive line, or is it going to be Ohio State's offensive line? We'll have to see. Defensive-wise, Ohio State, they've got the playmakers to do it, man. They've got Caden McDonald, they got Caden Curry, they got Caden Davis, they got Jack Sawyer, they got JT Tuimoloau, they got Ty Hamilton, they got Edric Houston, they got Joshua Mickens, they got Davison Igbinosun, they got Denzel Burke, they got Cody Simon, they got also Caleb Downs, sophomore All-American from Alabama. Those are the guys who are going to have to step up in order for Ohio State to win this game. I think the big playmaker that's going to be very important in this game are two guys, Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau. I think if those two guys can step up, play a lot better than they did last week, because Tuimoloau also had very good success in games he's played against Penn State. If those two can disrupt a bunch of pressure against either Bo Perula or Drew Aller, if they can do those things, I think Ohio State's defense is going to eat Penn State alive. Because I just don't think Penn State's playmakers are better than Ohio State's defensive backs. We'll have to see, though. I think Ohio State's in a tough challenge this week, and they're going to have to play their best football of the year so far against a very good Penn State team. My prediction, I'm an Ohio State fan, so obviously you know where I'm going with this. I'm going with the Ohio State Buckeyes to go into Happy Valley and beat Penn State. Final, Ohio State 30, Penn State 24. Ohio State will move to 7-1. Penn State will drop their first game of the year, going to 7-1, and then Ohio State will move on to Purdue, and then Penn State will move on to Washington. That's it for this episode of this podcast, and we will see you next week for next week's episode.